So now we can set up the explosion that'll actually knock the plank down. And you can play with the mass if you want to, just to change how heavy the plank feels when it gets knocked over. But now we can go ahead and create an ENV Fizz Explosion entity, and we'll just center it and put it toward the top. This just applies physics force to whatever is around it. It won't do any damage or have a visual component, so we'll tackle that with another entity. And we'll just call this one Explosion Plank and set the magnitude to 500. Alright, and now we'll create an ENV Explosion. This will be the actual, the sound and the visual effect and so on. So we'll call this Explosion Plank Visual. We'll change the damage to 200. Doesn't really matter. We'll just check that flag so it doesn't kill the Combine guy. And those are our explosions. So we can go to the trigger and add a couple of events on trigger, target both of the explosions, and explode. And we'll give it a delay of 0.4 seconds. So when that's triggered, the Fizz Explosion pushes the plank over, and the explosion, the regular ENV explosion, just causes the visual effect. And one more thing, a better magnitude is 1000 for the Fizz Explosion in this case. So now we can test this out. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We can just do a couple of things to clean it up. So first of all, we can set the damaging doesn't push it key value to yes, so that the player can't shoot it to knock it down prematurely. And also, we don't need it to move. In fact, we don't want it to be able to move after it falls down. So we can disable motion. And we can do that on this trigger by just specifying a delay. We'll say 6 seconds. After which we won't allow the plank to move anymore. So by that point, it should have been settled on the ground already. So we'll make an on-trigger event. After 6 seconds, we'll target the Fizzbox plank, and we'll disable motion. And that needs to be an on-trigger. So then, since the plank is no longer able to move, we don't need the ball socket constraint or the second block that's tying it together. So we can also target those after 6 seconds and just kill them to get rid of them. Just sort of tidy things up. And under the flags for the plank, we can set the fizz gun flag so that the gravity gun can't move it, and also check the player motion doesn't trigger movement. And we'll also set it to motion disabled by default, so this way until we trigger this event, it won't be able to move at all. So we'll just add another trigger, or another event to this trigger, and as soon as this trigger is stepped into, we'll target the plank and enable motion just before the explosions go off. So motion will be disabled until we step into the trigger, at which point it'll be allowed to move while the explosions trigger and while it falls down, and then motion will be disabled again. And you can compile to see this for yourself, but just take my word for it. That motion disabled box kind of changes the way the plank behaves. It doesn't fall over all the way. So I'm just going to change the mass scale back to 0 to fix it. And we can see how this looks. So you can see if we shoot the plank, it doesn't move. Even if we have the gravity gun, we can't push it or pull it. and if something were to collide with it, it wouldn't move. Its motion is disabled until we enable it. So we step into the trigger, it enables motion, falls over, and it looks pretty good. And if we were to shoot it right now, it wouldn't move. So just to quickly review, we have our NPC, the Combine Test Guy, who is asleep by default. And when we step into the trigger, it wakes him up. And when he wakes up, it targets the assault goal, tells it to activate the assault, which makes him go to this rally point. On reaching the rally point, it begins the assault, tells him to go to assault point 1. And when he reaches assault point 1, after a delay of 0.2 seconds, he goes to the next assault point, which is assault point 2. And he's able to go down because of that invisible ramp. Now in the meantime, that same trigger enables motion on the plank, triggers the 2 explosions that push it down with physics. Thanks to that ball socket joint, it rotates gently to the ground, and then motion is disabled, so it looks like the Combine soldier is going down the ramp. And then the player can go back up the ramp and isn't able to screw himself over by knocking it around. And then when we disable motion, we just clean things up by killing those 2 ball socket entities.